Introduction of myself for those of you that I don't know. My name is Jason Witmier. I am the Director of Education and Technology at Safe Fleet, which means that I basically handle all of the product that we do at Safe Fleet, whether it's lighting, governors, L-card product, ROM doors. I basically cover all of it. Quick background if you're not aware, Safe Fleet was recently acquired by Clariance Technologies. This happened about 5 or 6 months ago now. So we are part of the Clariance family, and that doesn't change anything to you as a dealer, an OEM, or an end user. All it does is bring more capabilities to the table for us. So you can see the brands up there. We were bought out as Safefleet as a whole. So they've not broken up our brands whatsoever. We are still just a division located underneath Clariance. When it comes to Safefleet, we specifically deal with the FEI group, which is Fire, Emergency, and Industrial, and that includes FRC, Foam Pro, Elkhart Brass, and ROM. At Safely, we like to talk about our core values. For those of you that have attended in the past, I apologize. You get to hear this over and over, but that is our script. It is the fact that we are safety driven with a deep focus on our customers, and our customers are threefold. They are the OEM, the dealer, and the end user. They are all customers to us. We pride ourselves on providing respect to the industry and then getting that respect back from them with a lot of innovation in our product. And the really important part about this last part of the script is the T, trust-based. That's what this presentation is about today. It's about developing trust, giving you facts that you can carry out to do your job so that you have a trust in us as a supplier, but also so that your customer has a trust in you because you're going to know more about the product. When it comes to product, Safely covers a wide gamut. You can see on the screen here some of what we cover. We like to say that of all the things you can spec on a fire truck, we offer about 50% of the items you can spec through one of our brands. So when you do deal with a Safely regional, you're kind of getting an overall vision of everything. I'm going to put a quick mention in on Rig Recon. Rig Recon is a site that we're in the process of launching. Right now, if you go to rigrecon.com, you're just going to have a under construction, but you will have two links at the bottom. One to take you to our socials, where all of these videos that you're going to see live. The other one takes you to subscribe now, and that's what the QR code on the screen is. That subscribes you to our newsletter. Newsletters can be a dirty word today, because if you're like me, you sign up for something like Firehouse or Fire Engineering, and you get 4 or 5 emails a day. And eventually you get tired of deleting things. Our newsletter comes out once a month. It's a 2-page newsletter, and it specifically is designed to give you an education on a product, not just a straight-on sales pitch. We'll talk about our competition. In some of our newsletters, we'll talk about product we don't even sell. The goal is to better educate everyone on the fire truck in general. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about the science and technology that goes behind the scene light. We're going to do a brief overview of all the FRC products, all the lighting products that is. Then we're going to do a detailed competitive analysis. That detailed competitive analysis is going to dive into comparing our product to our competition. And we're going to wrap up with our LED upgrade program. That'll just give you some insight into what's out there available to you for upgrading lights. Today we are specifically talking about the FRC product. FRC is located in Wisconsin, New York, 47,000 square foot facility with 110 employees that operate on one shift. You can see the different products on the screen there that we build at FRC. The unique thing with FRC, if you ever have an opportunity to tour our facility, and if for some reason you are ever out on the middle of Long Island, please reach out. We would be happy for you to see it. What you'll see there that's unique compared to other places in the market You will still see people sitting at desks with soldering irons, soldering circuit boards. You will see a test area where we water test and optically test all of our lighting. So we still control all of that in-house, which is something we're very proud of. This presentation today is specifically to drive the point of understanding scene lighting. It's not just meant to be a sales pitch. You see a term on the screen here about effective. You're going to hear me say the word effective several times throughout this presentation. There's different ways that that word's going to come into play. Some of them are going to be raw lumens versus effective lumens. But what this slide here is really driving at is it's all about getting what's going to work best on the fire scene. The point here being, think back to 10, 20, 30 years ago. Some of you on this call were probably doing this at the time. I am close to that at this point. Some of you might not even know what I'm talking about, but 30 years ago, we had a 1,000-gallon per minute fire pump. And with that 1,000-gallon per minute fire pump, we could put out fires. And then out came a 1250, and someone needed to have a 1250. It wasn't necessarily that they looked at their fire scene and said, man, I really need to flow 250 more gallons per minute. It was because they wanted to be bigger than their neighbor. Then 1,500 came out. Then 2,000 came out. And we just kept one-upping each other. Now, if you know very much about fire pumps, you'll know that in reality, that rating, that's your rating from draft. If I have a pressurized source coming into the rig from a fire hydrant, for example, that 1,000-gallon per minute pump and that 2,000-gallon per minute pump, if they have the same number of discharges, they're going to put out the same amount of water because of the pressurized source coming into them. The same thing happened with scene lighting. We kept one-upping each other. Oh, I need to have the brightest. Sometimes the brightest might not be the best because it's a number. The best light is what's most effective. So it's looking at your particular customer and saying, where do I want the light? Do I want to just light up the entire scene as bright as possible? Or am I specifically in this application trying to light up the ground? And in this next application trying to light up across the street? That's the kind of stuff we're going to talk about today. One of the questions we get asked very often, who has the brightest light in the industry? It's a loaded question. There's several different brands out there. There's several different terms that you see on the screen in blue text. The bottom line, all of this confuses people. It confuses the OEM, the dealer, and the end user. Our goal here today in this presentation is to make this clearer so you have a better understanding and feel for it. This is our first video we're going to watch. Now, there are 4 educational videos, and then there's going to be a bunch of videos that compare product. In these educational videos, they're 2 to 3 minutes. No one's speaking to you. There is audio associated with it. If it doesn't come through to you, it is just a song playing in the background, so you're not missing anything. The point is, we're going to watch a video that's going to give a graphical explanation with diagrams of what the terms are we're talking about, and then I'll follow it up with some slides that drive the point home. So without further ado, we'll start our first video here. So the purpose of this first video was to understand some terminology because it's important to speak about lighting in the right way. I'll go back again and date myself and say that 15 years ago, when we were dealing with mostly halogen lighting, we referred to everything in the terms of wattage. Now, when we had halogen lighting, they had a lumen output because lumens are the measurement of brightness. So obviously anything that's putting out light can be measured in lumens. It's just not the common terminology we talked about. We referred to it as wattage because that's the power the light would draw. And back then, wattage was fine because as the wattage went up, the brightness went up. They were directly correlatable that you could say more watts, more light. Not today, not in lumens, and not in terms of LEDs. If I have two LEDs and one's drawing more power than the other, so it has more wattage, doesn't necessarily mean it's brighter. And you're going to see why as we go through the presentation. So it's imperative that we speak in terms of lumens when we sell LED lighting. To further confuse things, we can throw in the term lux. So what exactly does lux mean? Lumens are the volume of light being emitted from the lamp. Lux is the specific intensity of a light at a point on the ground over a defined area. We never sell based on lux. We will do comparisons based on lux when you look at ground plots. But you couldn't just sell and say this is a 1000 lux light because it matters where you're measuring. This example you see on the left-hand side of the screen. Think of a flashlight that has a sliding collar on it that adjusts the beam. So if I have 1000 lumen output and I adjust that beam down to a tight pattern 1 square meter in the distance, I may get 1000 lux on the ground, which would make sense. 1000 lumens, 1000 lux. If I widen that pattern out, so it's over 10 square meters, it's now 100 lux on the ground because each individual point got a little dimmer as I widen the beam. It's still a 1000 lumen light, but on the ground it looks different. That's why we have the term lux. We won't use it to specifically sell a product, but we will talk about lux when we look at ground plots. Our next video gets into effective lumens. Now, I gave you the kind of the definition of effective at the beginning of this. This is talking about what is effectively coming out of the light, not what is most effective on the ground, but the difference between raw and effective lumens. Because prior to this, you may have only ever heard one term, and that was lumens. And you heard, oh, it's a 20,000 lumen light. What you're going to learn, not all 20,000 lumen lights are created equal. This video is going to help explain why. This video really touched on what used to be the dirty little secret in our industry when it came to lighting. Now, the reason I say it used to be is because we're trying to change the industry. We're trying to really get the point out there to help people understand what the difference is. You're going to hear me throughout this presentation talk about competition. I'm primarily going to talk about our two biggest competitors in lighting, and that would be Whalen and High-Vis or FireTech, whichever name you want to go by. Doesn't mean to say there aren't others. There are some other good lighting suppliers out there. Federal Signal has scene lights. Uh, Sound Off has some good scene lights, and Akron has some good scene lights. But the primary competitors we see in the apparatus market are Whalen and High-Vis. You're going to hear me talk about them in comparison. There are times where I'm going to tell you that we do something better than them. There are times I'm going to tell you that they may do something better than us. It's about understanding your competition. It's not about bashing your competition. This terminology, effective versus raw, this is pretty cut and dry. Raw lumens are what the light can physically produce in the perfect conditions. So the way I would explain this is if I take a single LED and I put it on a desktop test bench, let's say, and I light it up to full power, I measure the output. That output, say, is 100 lumens. If I put 8 of them on a board, 8 times 100, 800 lumens, that's the rating of the light. The dirty little secret is there are other factors that come into play. For one thing, there's losses. I have to pass through a lens to control the light, and we'll explain why we have to pass through a lens in an upcoming video. That lens can have losses associated with it. There are losses for electronics. Another thing to keep in mind with LED lighting is if you were to run an LED at full power without finding a way to shed the heat off of it, it will burn itself up. So anyone that manufactures an LED light has to look at the heat on the board, and they monitor that heat through the circuitry. And if they see that it's getting too hot, they'll turn down the output of the light to prevent from burning it up. Now, the better thing to do is to shed that heat off so you never get that hot. What it will tell you with FRC lighting, this is one of the key factors to remember going forward. We rate our lights. When we give you a lumen rating, that lumen rating is at 185 degrees Fahrenheit. So if I tell you it's a 20,000 lumen raw light, that means that lumen was measured when that LED was fully heated up. And we're going to keep it heated to that level. I'm going to talk sometimes about what I'll call the Amazon lights in the market. There are different brands you can buy off of Amazon. And quite often when you're speccing a rig, we'll hear someone say, man, I looked at that brow light you have and that thin strip that goes across the front. I can get the same thing for my Jeep for a third of the cost. And most salesmen will say, well, the one you're going to buy off Amazon doesn't have a lifetime warranty. And the guy will say, it doesn't matter. I could buy 3 of them by the time I ever reach the cost of yours. What's missing from that Amazon light that people aren't seeing are heat management, heat sinks, and optics. Those are the things we're going to talk about here as we put this light together. So the industry average is about 30% loss for most lights, not for FRC, but for many lights. The analogy I like to use here is think of kid gets out of or in high school, gets his first job. And let's say that kid got lucky and got 10 bucks an hour and they work 20 hours their first week. Friday, they get that check and they're all excited and they can do simple math. $10 an hour times 20 hours, it's a $200 paycheck. Then they open it up and go, boss, something's missing. I only got $130. Taxes were taken out. That's what happens with raw lumens and effective lumens. Raw lumens are the gross pay before taxes. Effective lumens are the take-home pay after Uncle Sam took his chunk out of it. Almost all lighting in the market is marketed based on the raw lumen rating. So when I compare the competition to FRC in the industry average loses anywhere from 30 to 45% of their light. So that means whatever they sell you, the effective output is going to be about 60% of what they advertised. FRC only loses on average 10%. So whatever we put the raw lumen rating at, you're going to get 90% of that out to the fire ground. You'll understand that more as we look at some of these videos. The enemy of an LED is heat. So the way you control that LED and keep it working efficiently and putting the most light out is to shed that heat off. This is one of the places where that Amazon light isn't necessarily going to have any technology. It's also going to be what reduces their price. So FRC has poured a lot of engineering into their heat sinks. And you saw it in the video. There's a neat little graphic that showed air flowing up through. These heat sinks are shedding heat off of the light so that we can continue to burn it at full power. Second part of it is the circuit board. So you have to get the heat off of the LED onto the heat sink. The way to do that is through the circuit board. We use a metal core circuit board at FRC. We used to call it an aluminum circuit board. There's a couple other metals in there other than aluminum these days, so we now just call it a metal core circuit board. Your cheap Amazon light is probably going to have a plastic circuit board in it. Now, I will say that our competitors in the fire industry, the high-vises and the Waylands of the world, they're also using a metal core circuit board. So when I talk metal core versus plastic, I'm really only talking those cheap third-party lights. This slide just shows you what the heatsink looks like on a finished light. So this is our Spectra series. We covered the heatsink on these. It just dressed it off a little nicer, and we could still shed all the heat in the world. There was no issue with heat overheating. The problem was you could get debris trapped down in here, and now it was hard to get that debris out of there and clean. So on our Radiant series, we exposed those heat sinks. We brought our power supplies out to the back and put their own heat sinks on those, and now you can clean everything out. They're never going to get that hot that they would burn you to the touch. We just took a few slides talking about heat, and now we have a video talking about temperature. But it's not talking about temperature from the standpoint of heat. It's talking about temperature from the standpoint of color. Now, the light color or the light temperature, it is important when we look at history and we look at the old halogen bulbs or incandescent bulbs versus daylight, which we get in today's LEDs. Most LEDs on the market today, Wayland, High-Vis, FRC, are in that daylight range. So when you're comparing competitors in today's lighting, the temperature doesn't mean a whole lot. But when you're looking to do an upgrade, the temperature can mean an awful lot. This is our last educational video, and this one's going to talk about how to bend the light. So there's 3 or 4 pieces that go into this puzzle. One was the terminology. The next one is raw versus effective. The last one is, how do I get the light out onto the scene where I need it? That's the last part of the puzzle. This video is going to show you the different ways to bend light. Forgot to forewarn you up front that that song is the same in every video. So I apologize for any of you that have that little tune stuck in your head now for the rest of the afternoon. But I promise you that is the last time today that you will hear that tune. What that video was trying to explain, when you take an LED, and let's go back to the workbench example. So you put it on the workbench and you heat it up as bright as you, or you turn on as much power as you can, and it gets heated up. It's blasting light out in all directions. Nothing is collecting that light. So let's go back to our Amazon light example. You put that light in the front of a Jeep, and you stand in front of the Jeep and you face the front of the Jeep. The light looks really bright, and you're really impressed by it. Now you turn around so the light's at your back, and you look off into the distance. You probably have a decent amount of light on the hood. You probably have a decent amount of light 5 or 6 feet out in front of the vehicle. 30 feet down the street, nothing. Because that light's not designed to do that. You will notice there are no optics in the lens. If you go to our old halogen lighting, if you ever broke an Optimum or an FRC focus lamp, the lens was just a piece of glass. You didn't see any optics in it. That glass was just preventing the elements from coming into the light and preventing any damage to the bulb. Technology that uses no optics in the lens focuses their light through reflection. So they'll bounce it off of panels. They could be mirrors. They could just be a high gloss surface. That's how they're gonna put certain angles in there and bounce that light to get it where you need it on the scene. It works, but it has a higher loss of intensity. The more complicated way and a little bit more expensive way is refraction. That is taking a lens or a prism and aiming the light where you want it on the scene. Much less loss of intensity, much more efficient. To better understand this, let's go back to high school science or health class and think of your eye. So as you sit in front of the computer screen looking right now, there's beams of light coming off that screen and they are striking the lens in your eye. The lens is then focusing them onto your retina so your brain can process the image. We're doing exactly the opposite with scene lighting. We're taking all those lights coming out of that LED, collecting them in a lens, and focusing them out into the distance. Where a lot of the science truly lies and where our patents are held in LED lighting is in that lens. So as you look at this Spectra lens, across the top and bottom, you see what looks like a kind of a distorted image of an LED. That's your parabolic lens that is directing light down to the ground. Down the center, you have a bunch of eyeballs or fisheye looking lenses. Those are the ones that are collecting light and providing it out into the distance. And then across the bottom, we built in a little, looks like an exploded version. That's your focus section that gets light directly down to the ground. The ultimate goal, and you're going to hear me say this a lot when we look at the competitors' videos, the ultimate goal is to get a uniform flood and spot pattern across the scene. You don't want to see hot spots. You don't want to see dark spots. You want to see uniform lighting. This is our first comparison. And this is going to show you what lens technology can do. It's also going to explain a little bit to you about the difference between raw and effective. So let me give you the background on what I'm going to show you here. I'm going to do a comparison between a Whalen light and an FRC light. Now there's a few things that I have to ask you to trust me on. We set this up in a parking lot behind our facility on a tripod. The lights are at equal heights, so they're on top of the same tripod, and we haven't moved the tripod. So it's at the same height off the ground. It's at the exact same spot in the lot. They're equal lights. We didn't choose our competitor's weakest light and our strongest light. We chose two lights that were considered equals, so they have a very similar, if not identical, raw lumen rating. The first light I'm going to show you is a Whalen Pioneer. So there's the Whalen Pioneer lit up in the lot. I told you to look for an even, uniform flood and spot pattern. This is a pretty even pattern. You're getting nice light out of this. I'm going to put a few markers up on the screen for you. This double-headed arrow is about the full width of the light. So obviously we have some ambient lighting in the parking lot that we couldn't shut off. But when you look at this light pattern on the ground, you see this kind of makes this cone shape. That's about as wide as it gets. This arrow is showing about the width at the ground level right at the base of the tripod. In the distance, I've thrown up a target for you. Concentrate on that target for a minute. See what you, or think in your mind, what can you see? I mean, it's pretty clear that you can see a car door here and the tires. There's a building out here. There's other stuff here, but I'm not sure you can identify it. The last line I'm going to throw up on the screen for you is a solid yellow line. So this is at the ground level. This is measuring how far back is the light cast. So through optics, we can bend light and actually make it go backwards. That's what I'm measuring here, is how far back on the ground does this Whalen Pioneer go. Now with the next click, I'm going to turn the Pioneer off, and I'm going to turn on an FRC Spectra Max. All of the targets are going to stay up on the screen. Take notice, here was the full width of the Pioneer beam. The Spectra Max is off the screen. Here was the full width at the ground level right at the base of the tripod. We've kept that width off the screen with the Spectra Max. This line was indicating how far back the lighting came, and if you noticed on the last slide, it was just a little bit of light back there. We're carrying well beyond the line with a lot of light. And now look out into the distance. Now I can make out the whole car. I can make out another car beyond it. I can make out all these trees and the limbs on them and that full building. To drive this home, I'm going to flip back and forth a few times for you. When you get the PDF of this, there'll be two slides in there. One that shows the Whalen Pioneer, one that shows the FRC Spectra Max. At the bid table, these would be considered equivalent lights based on their output. In reality, in the parking lot, you be the judge on whether or not they're equivalent. And that's really what comes down to raw versus effective. The last part of the science, I'm going to talk about how to evaluate scene lights. So one of the things that our competitor High-Vis and FireTech does really well are ground plots. They'll take an image of a rig and then say, okay, if you put two lights on the driver's side and two lights on the officer and one off the front and two in the rear, here's a ground plot all around the rig of the lighting you're getting. And it's going to look like this plot here. I'm not the biggest fan of ground plots for everything. Ground plots can tell you something. From this ground plot, I can clearly tell that this beam, it might be hard to see on your screen here, but 35 feet in each direction. So this light can light up about 70 feet wide. I can see that it goes out about 60 feet. What I can't necessarily relate to is the white area is 80 to 130 lux. What's a lux? Now, I gave you the definition of a lux, but in your mind, do you know how bright 80 lux is? I mean, based on that white color, I'd say, wow, it's blindingly bright. Not necessarily. This is a scale. This is just saying the white is the brightest part of this light. In theory, if this light were 5 lux and out here was 1 lux, I could show it that same bright white. So it can tell you some things, but if you're just relying on a ground plot alone to evaluate a light, we started to coin a little bit of a saying, you're doing it wrong. That's not exactly the way you want to look at it. This drone shot is this exact same light. This is a Spectre 950, by the way. This drone footage is this exact same light. But now instead of showing you a ground plot, we're showing you a photo of the light. We did it on a football field because not everyone, but most people can relate to the distances on a football field. So the tripod's set up on the goal line. So I can clearly count 5, 10, 15, 20 yards out, I've got light. I have a good feel for how wide the hash marks are. So I can see the hash marks here, and I know that's how wide I'm lighting up. This is a photo of that exact same light in a parking lot. So now I can judge based on the number of spots that I've lit up and how wide I've lit the spot up. The one cool thing with this 950, this image you see here that I'm circling my pointer around, that's not an optical illusion. That's not ambient light. That's not a cast off from the camera. That is that light because that lens is designed to bend light backwards. So we are getting light on the ground behind this light. Now that 950 typically mounts on the side of a rig. So why would I want to cast light backwards? Well, I'm going to cast it into the side of that rig's body and down the side of the rig to the ground. So that covers the science of it. Now we're going to talk about, we're not going to go through every product we have because it would take way too long. And a lot of the products have been out there a long time. We're going to touch on each of the models so you understand the differences between them. The first thing that we are very proud of and we like to point out, we are made in America. I already told you we're made out on Long Island. So we have been engineered, assembled, and tested in the US since 1968. Talked about competition and how competition can be good for our industry. Our warranty is a great example. We used to have a 10-year warranty. If you looked at the history of LED lighting, most LED lights didn't fail at 10 years. They didn't fail at 7 years. If they failed, they were going to fail 1 to 3 years into the life of the light because it's typically a bad solder point on a board or a bad power supply. So one of those things would fail fairly early in the process. High-Vis came into the market and offered a limited lifetime warranty. Now, limited meant it covered the LED, didn't cover the power supply. Well, the LEDs won't burn up typically unless the power supply gives them the wrong amount of power. It made us step up. So FRC stepped up and came out with a full lifetime warranty, but we took it one step further. We did something called our no-hole guarantee. Think about a fire truck. Something breaks normally on a fire truck. You got to take it off, send it back to the manufacturer. He's going to evaluate it. He's either going to say, yeah, it's our fault, it failed, it's under warranty, here's your new one. Or they're going to come back and say, nope, you did something wrong. Here's a bill if you want a new one. And all that time you're evaluating that, the rig's out of service. We're not going to do that. If you have a light that fails, we're going to ask you to do one thing for us. Take a set of wires or a meter, hook up to the wires coming into the light, and make sure you have power. We just want to verify that your generator or your DC power is working. If you've got power, jot down the serial number on that light, send it into our warranty department. We ship you a new light. You pull the old light off, put the new light in. So you're not driving around with a light missing from the side of the truck. Yeah, granted, it's burned out until we get you the new one, but it's not a hole in the side of the truck. You get the new light, you send the old one back, we evaluate it. We will send you an invoice until we get the old light back. Once we get the old light back, that invoice goes away. 9 times out of 10, when we evaluate it, we're going to find something failed inside the light. Not your fault. We move on. Once in a while, we'll find out that the fuses coming into the light burned up. That means there was an overvoltage on the rig. We're not all hung up on chasing you for the cost of one light, but we will reach out to let you know what's going on because we don't want to see you burn up all the other lights on that rig. First product I'll talk about is Crest Light. This is our low profile brow light. This is the one that we introduced because when High-Vis came out, they came out with a low profile brow light and came into the market with it. Whalen and FRC did not have a competitive product at the time. Our competitive product is that Crest Light. It's available in several different widths. All of these slides, I'm not going to read everything off the slide to you because you're going to get this in the PDF. So it's available in a bunch of different widths with different, you can have markers or no markers. They're available different colors. There's one big thing I need to point out with this light. We made a mistake when we brought this light to market because we advertised it at 17,800 lumens. Now, I told you earlier in the presentation, people advertised at the raw lumens. On this one, 17.8 is the effective lumens. The raw lumens on this light are closer to 28,000. Where that causes a problem for everyone is if you compare a High-Vis, which is a 65-inch wide bar, you're going to see like 28,000 lumens. And then you're going to say, oh, yeah, the FRC is 10,000 less. No, you're comparing apples to oranges. So we're going to fix our literature and start advertising this light with the raw lumen rating. This will make more sense to you on one of the slides at the end where I compare products side by side. Another thing we did with our Crest light, we designed it to go 1 lane wide, so we don't want to blind oncoming traffic, and we designed it to go well down the street. You can see 150 feet here on the chart. Our So Bright is our compact light that you see used a lot on pumpers for hose bed or backup body lighting, and really a lot on the aerial, on the tip, lighting up the stick itself, lighting up at the base of the turntable, things like that. So the So Bright comes with 3 different patterns: spot, trapezoid, or flood. Now it's one of those patterns. One light can't do all 3. It's a different lens, so you got to specify which pattern you want. It's always been available in a white or a black housing. It's now also available in a silver gray or a silver chrome looking housing. I, I use that word chrome loosely. It is not chromed, but it's a silverish chrome color paint. There's a big difference between the two. The silver gray chrome was designed because a lot of your aerial devices have that grayish color to them. So then it blends in a little better with it. Spectra has been our high intensity LED lighting for well over a decade now. There are several models of the Spectra. The Spectra Max, the only difference is the Max is brighter. It's 28,000 versus 20. The Max S was designed to go after that old Federal night fighter market. So to give you the ability to turn flood on and off, spot on and off, or the whole thing on. Spectra HR is the one I'm really going to talk to you about here quickly. Spectra HR was brought to market because being located on Long Island, we work closely with FDNY on a lot of projects. And they came to us and said, look, on a fireground, we got a lot of light on the first and second floor because of street lighting throughout the city. But get above the third floor to the fourth and the fifth. And yeah, obviously to a high rise, but even just to a downtown in rural America where you may have 4 or 5 story tall buildings, you don't see lighting up high. And in their specific application, their pumpers don't have light towers. So they weren't getting a lot of light up. So they asked us to take a light that normally goes out and down and design something that goes out and up. And that's what this Spectra HR is. It's 28,000 raw lumens. It's a little bit of a thicker lens, so it does lose more than 10% effective. So you're down to 22,960 effective. But the concept here is to get light up on the building. So if I'm parked back from the building and I'm sitting on top of a rig at about 8 feet tall, I can light up 6 stories high, 90 feet, by about 4 apartment buildings wide, 80 feet. Would I suggest that you put all Spectra HR on a rig? No, but maybe in one position, maybe on a tripod that you take out and set up in the street to light up that building, it can have some really cool applications. The 900 series is our low profile slim mount light. This came to market and was designed to go on the side of the cab between the front and rear door. When we came to market with the model 900. Now this is my favorite light when it comes to explaining this whole PowerPoint you've been listening to. Effective lighting. What am I trying to do with the light? So the 900 is 7,000 lumens. The 950 is 5,000 lumens. When we came to market with the 950 as the second light, people obviously said, why? Why would you come out with a light that's not as bright as the old one? Because we weren't worried about that number. We were worried about what the light does. I'm going to show it to you in a ground plot. And like I said, I wouldn't sell only on ground plots, but they do have a purpose. And then I'm going to show it to you from drone footage. So the 950 specifically designed to get light down to the ground. This is the ground plot I showed you earlier, about 70 feet wide, 60 feet out. The 900, much narrower pattern, 40 feet wide, but it goes out further, almost to, that's a little blurry to see, but I think it's 165 feet, 155 feet out. So the point here is, what do you want to do with the light? Do you want to light up the address and the house across the street? Or do you want to light up the ground around the rig? And there's no right or wrong answer to this question. It depends on what your customer's looking for. The cool thing is we did this, we were smart about it. It's the exact same bolt pattern and wiring. So if you sold a rig 10 years ago that has a 900 on it, and now the 950's out there and people go, man, I'd rather the 950. Simple change out, and the 950 costs less than the 900. Here's the same comparison through drone footage. So this is a 7,000 raw lumen light versus the 5,000, the 900 versus the 950. Right away when you light them both up side by side, you can see one's going much further out than the other. The 950 is designed to get a wide pattern, which it's doing. The 900, you barely even see the hash marks because it's a tighter pattern. As I let the drone footage continue, we'll go overhead. Now you get a really good look at that tight, long pattern versus that wide pattern. Again, asking the question, what is your customer's purpose? On the side of the rig, a lot of times my customer's purpose is to light up that area right there around the side of the rig. It's not about choosing the brightest light. It's about choosing the most effective light for your customer. This drone footage is the same drone footage I'm going to show you as we get into the comparison with our competition. The way we did the drone footage, every light was set on the goal line, the same height, the same night, so it's the same ambient conditions with the same power to them. And then the drone kept flying the exact same pattern. Radiant is our newest series. These are LED as well. At FDIC in 2023, we introduced all three of these lights, but the Eco was only available for purchase after FDIC in 23. The Lux and Max did not become available for purchase until after FDIC this year in 24. The Eco is the entry-level products, 15,000 lumens. I mentioned that 10% loss, so it's 13,500 effective. This is the most efficient 15,000 lumen light on the market. It's available with one of two patterns. The default or standard is the asymmetrical pattern, which gets light down to the ground. The optional is the symmetrical pattern, which is a cone. This is what you would typically see on a light tower. This might be what you want on a tripod if you're putting this light on a tripod to take inside a house. You might want to get light up to the ceiling and down to the floor at the same time. If you don't specify which, you're getting asymmetrical because that's default. You have to specify symmetrical if that's what you want. The Lux is our surface mount, 22,000 lumens, which makes it 19,800 effective. This is available for purchase now. It's available in a white, black, or chrome housing, and you can dim this one. So you get the rig on scene, you're on an extrication, You turn all the lights on and light it up really bright. Now the extrication's done, and maybe you're directing traffic, waiting for the wrecker to clean up, and maybe you don't want as much light because it's too bright. You can hit a button and dim it down. The Max is our brightest offering in the market. It is a spot flood combination that you can control independently. 32,000 lumens raw, 28.8 effective. These ground plots just show you what the patterns look like if you turn one on and one off. So if you turn the whole light on, you're not losing. It's not like you're taking something away from the other two patterns. You're just laying them over top of each other. But there are some situations where someone says, I want spot on and I don't want flood, or vice versa. Competition is our next part of this presentation. Like I said earlier, it's important to know your competition and know what they have. And it's not to say that they don't do some good things, because they all do, and we all make each other better. I'm not going to go through every detail on these slides because you'll see these in the PDF that's coming to you. Wayland's big advantage in the market, they can match footprint. So they offer warning lights and they offer scene lights, so they were able to match some of them up. Now that's only if you're using a certain series light. If you're using this Pioneer series, that's not going to match up to any warning light. And if there's something you catch when you look at this Pioneer, look at where the word Pioneer is. What do you see behind here? That's reflective panels. So they're using a combination of technologies, because you can see they clearly have fisheyes up here. So they're doing some refraction, they're doing some reflection. You're going to see where that matters when you look at their effective outputs. Their warranties vary all across the board, and I'll go through them on each individual light. They do have a cool feature. They can control them through their CENCOM core system. It is neat. The one thing you got to question is not every OEM will install the CENCOM core system. Their big drawback is for some of their lights, they don't post the lumen output. And for the ones that they do post it, they only post raw. They never tell you effective. So these are the charts I was talking about where you'll be able to compare these in a PDF. The real purpose of these was to be able to say, I have a customer that spec'd a truck before and they had the EZ series and now they'd like to go with fire research. This gives you the crossover to tell you what to be looking at. On that EZ series, so the 600, 900, the M6 or the M9, that's where you see a range. Some of them have 5-year warranty, some 10, a couple of them lifetime. It depends on which exact light it is. They do not post effective lumens on these. On the Pioneer series, their warranty is 5 years versus our lifetime. Again, they don't post effective, but they do post raw, and they have a range pretty close to ours. This is our first side-by-side drone comparison of competitors. So on the left, you're going to see the FRC Radiant Lux. On the right, you're going to see the Wayland PCH2P. Note the raw lumens. They're close. 22,000 versus 20,261. If someone was in a bid situation, they'd say, okay, they're equals. But note the effective. They're effective, they don't post, but we were able to calculate it. 12,000 versus 19,800. So while I had less than 2,000 difference in raw, I have about 7,000 difference in effective. There are the two lights lit up. Note, I've said all along, look for a uniform spot and flood pattern on the ground. I'm going to let the drone fly up above. Now you can see that very defined cone pattern. They're doing a pretty good job here, you can see, of getting a cone of light out into the distance, but they're losing on the sides where we're more uniform. There's a house in the distance, about 500 feet away. There's some ambient street light hitting that house. You can see in this shot, that house really only has the street light hitting it. In this shot, you're picking up light from this, from the FRC light head. Now, I always said there's trade-offs. They're doing a good job of lighting up the goalposts here. We're not hitting the goalpost quite as strong. So where we gave up a little something here, we gained it in the overall pattern. The drone's just going to finish flying out. Next one we'll talk about is High-Vis. So High-Vis really came into the market with their brow, but they now offer a full range of different lighting, including warning lights. The big thing with High-Vis, they pushed industry change. So Wayland and FRC didn't have a low profile, thin brow. High-Vis came into the market and we had to develop something. I talked about the warranties. And by the way, High-Vis, I mentioned that they made FRC step up and get a lifetime warranty. They then stepped up and went with a full lifetime warranty themselves. So they are no longer a limited lifetime warranty. It's a full lifetime. They do have some cool features with ground plots. They have a social media platform that's hard to do business with or to compete with. They are very good at social media. They don't hide from effective lumens. They sell and advertise based on raw, just like all of us. But they also tell you they're effective on their website. So it is out there. We're going to start doing that with all of the FRC product as well. The drawback is when you look at their raw and their effective, they have massive losses, 30 to 45% loss. I'm going to show you that in the drone footage. A comparison between product. Guardian, Guardian Elite, and Guardian Junior would cross over to either our Spectra 950, 900 or our Lux series. Warranties are pretty even. We already went over that. Look at this, the raw output versus the effective. So our raw Lux at 22,000 is 19.8 effective. Their Guardian Elite at 20,000 is only 12,290 effective. Big loss. For this comparison, I'm using the FRC Spectra versus the Guardian Elite because I wanted two lights that had the exact same raw output. So they're both 20,000 raw. Effective, they're very different. Almost 6,000 lumens difference. Optically, you can clearly see the difference. These are equal raw output lights, but look at the light on the field. From the overhead, look at the distance here. We're over 40 yards with this pattern. We're just around 25 with the competitor's light. Again, note the cone. Note the dead spots. The drone's going to continue to fly up here, give us that shot out in the distance of the goalpost and the house. I'm not going to highlight the house this time, but you can clearly see the difference if you just look at it. Instead of noting the goalposts, we're striking the goalposts very strong here. The goalposts don't even exist here. And then I'm going to let it finish playing out. I have one more comparison video for you, and it's going to be on the pole mount. So on the pole mount, we now have the Radiant Max. That would be Firetech's FT series. The light we're going to compare to is their FT SLX15. Now I'll point out up front, a cynic would say you're not being fair. You're using their 28,000 raw versus your 32,000 raw. That's just because we picked the two brightest lights that we each offer. So yes, there are 4,000 difference in raw lumens, but look at the difference in effective. 16,510. Again, I come back to the bid table. At the bid table, I could probably swallow the 4,000 raw difference. 16,510 is a massive difference. And the proof is in the light on the field. We like to say with this Radiant Max that we can light up a football field, and we're not kidding. As you look at this drone footage, we're lighting up a football field. I don't have this one paused. It's going to go through all the different views. So there's your overhead. Look at the hash marks. Missing hash marks. Look at the things off to the right and left. So you can clearly see the bleachers on the right and left. You can clearly see the press box. You cannot make them out on this light. That is the true difference between raw versus effective. I don't have video on this one, but the last light I'm going to talk to you about are the brow lights. So the Crest light versus the Firetech brow. This is where I was talking about our marketing mistake. We advertise it at 17.8. We should be advertising it at 28.8. When I compare 28.8 to 26.9, they're very close. Now, one thing I will point out, we do have a higher loss in our brow. It's a thicker lens. It's a little harder to shed heat, so we do have a higher loss. We're not losing only 10% on this one. Last part of the presentation I'm going to talk to you about, takes about 5 minutes and we'll be done, are lighting upgrades. Lighting upgrades are a great way to stay in touch with your customer. You sell a new rig to a customer. If they're in a rural department, that may be the last rig they buy off of you for 15 to 20 years. So lighting upgrades give you an opportunity to stay in touch with that customer and to better their product. We have a website called upgradeyourlights.com. If you're going from an existing FRC light to a new FRC light, it gives you specific crossovers. What I'll tell you about performing the upgrade, let me start with showing you, and then I'll explain how you do the upgrade. This is Walkerton, Indiana's rescue truck. It has a total of 7 FRC halogen lights on it. 1 on the brow, 2 each side of the body, and 2 on the back on tripods. Look at the color and intensity of that light. You can see how many rows of parking blocks, 3 totaled, and I'm calling them out as row 2, 3, and 4. There's a reason I'm calling them out, because there's a row 1 and a row 5 that you can't see. We parked this truck in a lot and marked the lot so we could get back to the exact same spot the next night. The next morning, we upgraded these lights. Now, to do that upgrade, we were going from FRC halogen to Spectra. We did have to drill some new holes to mount the lights. We did not have to do any body work. There's no painting, there's no body fill. It's 3 wires on each light. Very simple to wire. And the only holes you were drilling were for an escutcheon plate that covered up all the old holes. So there's nothing to fill. We didn't change the generator. We didn't add extra lights. Here's the shot the next night. Now take a look at how many rows of parking blocks you can identify. Look at how wide the lot is, how long it is. You could not see any of that with the halogen lighting. There's a side by side of the 2 rig. Exact same rig, exact same generator, less draw on the generator. A Radiant Eco upgrade program was launched right after FDIC in 2023. We continued it at the same price into 2024. It will definitely run through the end of this year. We'll have to see if it'll run for 25. It'll run. The only question will be whether or not we have to adjust the price. The price is $1,549 for 2 light heads delivered to the customer, shipping included, and profit for the salesman included in there. The only catch is your organization has to be signed up to do it. So any state you want to participate in this in, you have to buy a demo light off of us. The demo light costs you $525. Sell 2 sets of upgrade lights and you paid for the demo. The last upgrade I'm going to talk to you about is SoBright. There are literally thousands of Collins Dynamic and Unity AG lights out on old trucks in the market. You can upgrade them very easily to a SoBright. This is an upgrade we did in Mishawaka, Indiana. On the right, you still see we left the Unity in place. On the left is the SoBright. One of the concerns we had when we were going to pull this Unity off was, would this base pull the chevron striping? If it was on a painted surface, would that base pull paint with it? We didn't have to change the base. All we had to do is take this bolt out, slide the SoBright into that existing base, put the new bolt in. 1 wire for power. The ground actually goes right through the bolt on those old Unities. You can see the difference here in light on the ground in the daylight inside the engine room. Here's some drone footage showing you the difference. Now, we upgraded the entire truck, so you're seeing a big difference. And ignore the front. While we were shooting this drone footage, the front light, the halogen light, burned out right in the middle of shooting. But look at the back specifically where we did the SoBright versus the Unity. I'm going to let the drone just fly over here quick and show you the difference. It's an impressive amount of light. All right, that brings us to the end of the presentation. So on the screen you have a my business card with a QR code that would just connect you as a contact. There is a survey. If you don't mind, thank you very much for your time and attention.